Hey there, and welcome to The Awesome Factor. This is a YouTube channel designed to discuss topics that will help everyone understand the importance of allergen awareness. Some weeks, we will have on guests to break down topics like functional foods, nutraceuticals, and what allergens do to your body. Other weeks, we will hear testimonials from people that show you just how dangerous or difficult living with allergens can be. For our first show, Ben will be breaking down his recent visit to a Pacers sporting event and how difficult eating there can be when you're gluten-free. Take it away, Ben. Hey there, Awesome Factor. My name is Ben Sparrow, and I wanted to talk a little bit about my recent trip to Gainbridge Fieldhouse to go watch the Pacers play. I'm gluten-free. I've been gluten-free for about 5 years, and one of the most difficult things about being gluten-free is going out to eat. But even more difficult than going out to eat at a restaurant is going to eat at a sporting event. A lot of times when you go to a restaurant, your menu will show things that are gluten-free and not gluten-free. It'll break stuff down. You'll have a waiter that can explain things to you and that can maybe make some different changes in the kitchen. But when you go to a Pacers game or a Colts game or some sort of sporting event, you can't really do that. I went and saw our Pacers get the dub against the Charlotte Hornets earlier in the month of January, and I went with a buddy of mine. My buddy and I spent some money on some tickets. That's not something we can do every single day, but he is a Charlotte Hornets fan and I am a Pacers fan. So we had a third buddy of ours join us, and we all went and watched the Pacers get the dub. While my one friend was pretty disappointed that the Charlotte Hornets lost, I was even more disappointed because I couldn't partake in any food that they really had. Over the past 5 years, I've been able to kind of deduce what has gluten and what doesn't. But for you, I'll kind of break it down. So when we got there, my friends and I went to grab some beverages. We wanted to celebrate getting some tickets and going to watch the Pacers play. So we went to one of the many different concession stands, and they basically only had beer. Now, when I'm talking about what they had, I can't tell you exactly what they had. We'll actually get into that a little bit later, but I can tell you what I remember, and it was overwhelmingly beer. And beer has gluten in it, so that's not something that I could drink. They had some different seltzer kind of things, but that was few and far between, slim pickings, if you will. So I just got a water, but my friends got some beverages. We went up to our seats, great seats, and it was a great game. About halftime, the Pacers, if I remember correctly, we're still in the fight. It was a close game at that point. We hadn't really played very well to begin the game. And my friends wanted to go and grab some dinner, grab some food. And so we all walked down and looked at the concession stand nearest us. And they had, the classic offerings. They had hot dogs, they had hamburgers, they had chicken tenders and fries. And while back in the day when I was a kid, those were always great staples to have at a sports game, I couldn't eat any of those. The hamburgers, well, they have hamburger buns. Hot dogs, hot dog buns. Both of those have gluten in them. Chicken tenders, well, they're covered in bread, so that has gluten in it, obviously. And the chicken tenders were also fried in the same oil as the fries, which means that if I had celiac or was gluten sensitive, I couldn't even eat the fries because they were fried in the same oil, and some of the residue, some of the gluten could contaminate the fries. My buddies got a chicken tender basket and got some fries, and I just kind of politely said, no, thank you. And we walked back up to our seats and sat down, and one of them had gotten nachos. And so they asked, hey, do you want a bite of this? Do you want a bite of that? And I had to say no. With the nachos, I didn't know if those were corn chips or not. If they aren't corn chips and they have some sort of wheat in them, well, that is gluten. And one of them asked, hey, fries aren't gluten. Do you want to fry? And I said, well, they're fried in the same oil. These are very good friends of mine. They didn't think I was obnoxious at all. But for some people, that may sound really obnoxious. When you think about it, when you're sitting down and you're actually looking at a menu, and we're going to be doing that in a minute here. When you're looking at a menu for a sporting event, you see just how many things have gluten in it. If you are gluten sensitive, you come from two different mind frames. You come from, okay, I know I shouldn't eat that, but I also don't really want to mention it. I don't really want to talk about it because that's really annoying for people. Like I mentioned before, my buddies, they know me well enough to know that I wasn't trying to be obnoxious when talking about, hey, those have gluten in them. But for people that I know that don't know me as well, maybe I sounded obnoxious. It's so exhausting being somebody that has to eat gluten-free because you have to do your research. You have to know a lot about the different ideas and topics behind gluten and how that can get into your food. And you also have to know what to say and when to say. So, for instance, at this event, I couldn't go up to the people at the concession stand and say, hey, you don't have any gluten products. Or you don't have any gluten-free products, excuse me. Because they could obviously tell me, they could say, well, that's not our job. Our job is to sell you the food. We're not the distributor. We don't bring in the food. We just sell you the food. And so I knew that I couldn't mention that to anybody and I wasn't going to get anywhere. A lot of people don't know what gluten is. They don't know the differences between gluten and gluten-free. And so I couldn't ask a lot of these people, even though they were absolutely swamped at halftime, I couldn't ask them, hey, do you know any gluten-free options and where I may be able to get those? All of that to say, it was a little bit disappointing. Even though the Pacers got the dub and we are grateful for that, go Sirs, we love the Pacers, I wasn't able to enjoy the game like my friends were. And while I'm not sitting here to complain, I'm trying to put you guys into my shoes. So maybe you can understand a little bit more about what gluten-free is and how prevalent gluten is, especially at a sporting event. What I've done and what we're going to go through now, and you're going to see this on your screen, is I've pulled up the concession map for Gainbridge Fieldhouse. And we're going to go through and we're going to mark off every single place that has gluten somewhere present. I will mention the beer, wine, and spirits, but a lot of times we're not going to go too deep into that because if it's not beer, it doesn't have gluten for the most part. That's not always true. But that also only counts to people over 21. And you can't just drink alcohol and have that be a meal. So that isn't going to count. I'll mention that, but we're going to break it down and go step by step through just to see. And it may seem obnoxious and overwhelming to you, but this is every day for somebody that is gluten sensitive. So here's our guide for concessions, restaurants, and clubs when it comes to Gainbridge Fieldhouse. We're going to break it down. Main concourse, section 1, bar. We've got beer, wine, and cocktails. We already talked about this. Beer has gluten in it. I won't mention it again. We'll go through and every bar we'll just highlight the beer as something with gluten in it. Section 2, Ben's pretzels. I've heard these are fantastic. I've been gluten-free ever since I've known about Ben's pretzels, so I've never been able to eat pretzels, but I've heard they're very, very good. So you've got indie local, that's great. Fresh made pretzels and fresh squeezed lemonade. Pretzels, gluten, can't have it. We'll cross that out. Fast Break Market in section 4, grab and go beverages and snacks. Now, this is a bit of a wild card. Some of the grab and go may have gluten in it. Something like a bag of pretzels that has gluten in it. But something like a bag of chips, if it's potato chips, those should be fine. So that's about as close as you're going to get to something that's gluten-free in section 4. The bar, again, we talked about it, beer. Section 5, Fieldhouse favorites. Pizza has gluten in it. Burgers, buns have gluten. Hot dogs, buns have gluten. Chicken tenders, those have gluten. And coffee, I just don't like coffee, but coffee doesn't have gluten in it. Section 6, 3-point taqueria, tacos and nachos. If it has wheat in the taco shell, maybe it's a tortilla that has wheat in it and not corn, that has gluten in it. So that's a bit of a wild card. We'll mark that as a wild card. Sailor Jerry Bar, we talked about it, beer, gluten. Orange leaf, frozen yogurt. Well, depending on the topping, may have gluten in it, but you're pretty safe there. Kona ice, shaved ice. That should be fine. Water doesn't have gluten in it. Thank the Lord. Section 11, Chick-fil-A, chicken sandwiches, fries, and chips. Chicken sandwiches, can't do it. Chicken sandwiches have gluten both in the bun and on the breaded chicken itself. Fries, now if this is a traditional Chick-fil-A, which it sounds like it is, they don't fry those in the same fryer as the chicken sandwiches. So you should be good with fries, and chips should be fine. Shake Bar by Steak and Shake. Items will include gourmet milkshakes. If it's anything but gourmet milkshakes, you've got gluten in it. Some of the different options for The milkshakes themselves having different toppings and things like that may have gluten in it, so that's a wild card. Flight deck beer has gluten. We're going to get to section 13, Crossroads Eats, gourmet hot dogs. Buns have gluten. Section 14, Corona Bar, beer, gluten. Java House, coffee and assorted desserts. That has gluten a lot of the time. Some of these desserts may not have gluten, but best bet is if it's a baked good, it has gluten. Warehouse District Barbecue, pulled pork, sounds delicious, probably has gluten on the bun. Brisket, well, depending if it's a brisket sandwich, has gluten. Mac and cheese, that is what I like to call the double whammy, as somebody that's also dairy-free, and we can talk about that a different week. Mac and cheese, the mac is the gluten, the cheese is the dairy. It's killer territory for people like me. Fieldhouse favorites in section 16, pizza, burgers, hot dogs, chicken tenders, and coffee. We've already talked about that. The kitchen in section 17, Asian-inspired bowls, sounds delicious. Soy sauce has gluten in it. I'm not sure of the other things, if that has gluten or not. We'll put that as a wild card. New Amsterdam Bar, beer, talked about it. Popcorn cart, variety of flavored popcorn, that should be okay, but depending on what is topped on the popcorn, you could have an issue. Fast Break Market, we've talked about this. You should be okay with most of the grab-and-go snacks and beverages. The Terraces, the Patron Bar, beer, talked about it. Circle City Chicken, operated by Taste of Innova. Chicken tenders, gluten. Innova greens should be fine. Fries, probably fried in the same place as chicken tenders, so not okay. Especially Uncle Nearest Whiskey Cocktail. Whiskey should be okay. Section 105, Delaware Street Pizzeria. Artisan Pizza, that has gluten. Meatball sandwich, gluten. Gluten will also be in the meatballs, most likely if they're store-bought in any way, shape, or form. And chopped salad, gotta watch, do they have croutons on it? A lot of these things are pre-prepped, so you're removing it from something that's already been prepped. Therefore, that is still contaminated. 3-Point Taqueria, we talked about that a little bit earlier. Does it have gluten in the wheat taco shell? Maybe, maybe not. Boom Baby Burgers, Signature Burgers, Brick Press Chicken Sandwiches, and Onion Rings. Onion Rings, gluten. Signature Burgers, gluten. Brick Pressed Chicken Sandwiches. Not exactly sure what that is, but if it's breaded at all, and the bread bun probably has gluten in it, so that's not okay either. Balcony, that's where I was sitting, up here. Upland Brewing Company, beer, wine, and cocktails. Some of Upland Brewing stuff is actually gluten-free and quite good, but beer, we're gonna count it. Fast Break Market, we talked about that before. Slam Dunk Snacks, operated by Ben's Pretzels, fresh made pretzels, and fresh squeezed lemonade. Lemonade should be fine, pretzels got gluten. Corona Bar, talked about it. Nacho Cart, loaded nachos. Do the chips have wheat in them? Probably. So that is a no-go. Fieldhouse favorites, talked about those. Bar Cart, draft beer, wine, and peanuts. Peanuts should be fine, but peanuts are a big allergen. So that, for other people other than me, will be an issue. Chick-fil-A, chicken sandwiches, fries, and brownies. Brownies are a no-go. Chicken sandwiches are a no-go. Fries, if this is a traditional Chick-fil-A, should be fine. Slam Dunk Snacks, hot dogs, gluten, nachos, maybe gluten, pretzels, gluten, popcorn, no gluten, candy, no gluten for some of it, and frozen novelties. Most likely all have gluten, definitely all have dairy. Warehouse District Barbecue, we've talked about that, and Sire Spirits Balcony Bar. Cognac slushies, sounds delicious. Beer, wine, and cocktails, they got beer. Crossroads Eats in section 217, nachos, pretzels, popcorn, candy, and frozen novelties. We just broke that one down. We've got the Margarita Cart, sounds epic. That probably doesn't have gluten in it, but the beer and wine above it does. Nacho Cart, talked about that. Fieldhouse favorites, pizza, burgers, hot dogs, and chicken tenders all have gluten. Bar Cart, beer, wine, and cocktails. Beer. Veggie Cart, vegetarian options. A lot of times with these vegetarian options, they have gluten as a binder, so you're probably no good there. Section 231, that's up where I was specifically. That's a value-priced beer. Can't have beer. Upland Brewing Company, Fast Break Market, grab-and-go beverages. So we're not even going to go into the club specifically because you have to pay a lot to get tickets into the club, so those won't even count. But as we've broken down everything here, you see that a lot of these options have gluten in them. So this is a demonstration. This is how you have to think as somebody that is gluten sensitive or gluten free. For somebody like me, somebody that when I eat gluten, I get sick, going to a sporting event can be dangerous. That means that a lot of the times the food I can't eat, the beer I can't drink, some of the cocktails I can have, but if we break it down, really there's nothing nourishing here. And when you don't have anything nourishing and you're drinking a cocktail or something like that, odds are that can lead to increased inebriation. That could lead to maybe dehydration, or you can get sick from what you're eating or get sick because you're not eating. And so for me, it was a really big point of reference, an issue, I should say, that I wanted to bring up here. So next time that you're going to a sporting event and you invite somebody that you know they're gluten-free, be cognizant. Think about, okay, well, I listened to this and I saw all the different options and how my friend, family member, coworker can't eat any of those. What am I going to do beforehand? Are we going to go someplace beforehand, a place that we know has gluten-free options? Are we going to pack a snack or two? Something that is maybe acceptable at some places, maybe not acceptable at others. It's all up to the place you're going. These are questions I think you need to ask. But in conclusion, for me, it was a fun game. It was a great game. We won. I had a great time, got a jersey, all those fun things. It was an experience that was notable. And it was notable not because of the win, but it was notable because I noticed for the first time, mind you, just how many things I couldn't eat. That was something that certainly bothered me, made me feel left out, made me feel like I couldn't participate fully. And so I just wanted to bring that up with you today. Talk a little bit about my experience, put yourself in my shoes for a minute to see what life is like for somebody with a gluten allergy. We hope you enjoyed that story. If you like this video, make sure to hit the like button and hit that subscribe button to make sure you're up to date with all content from the Awesome Factor. This video was made in conjunction with McYoung Foods, makers of Awesome Granola. To learn more about Awesome Granola or to go and purchase some, make sure to head on over to www.awesomegranola.com.